Before we get into A Real Pain, we just want to say that we are going to do a Best Picture review for the next episode, where we'll go through all 9 movies and talk about what we thought, if we've seen them, give our opinions, and give our... We made predictions before the Oscars for what we thought should win Best Picture. Since it's already happened, Anora's already won, obviously, so some of us are right and some of us were wrong. But we'll give our what we had predicted, why we predicted it, and our reactions to getting them right and wrong. And we'll go through all 9 Best Picture nominees to talk about what we thought.
Also, cheers to a real... Wait, ready?
Cheers to...
A real... At the same time, ready?
Cheers to...
Cheers to
a real
pain.
Here, cheers to St. Patrick. A real Patrick.
A real pain.
A
real painful St. Patrick's Day.
It is March 17th. We're drinking Bailey's. Is it strong? We're drinking Bailey's and celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And we just finished watching A Real Pain, written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg.
Good for him.
It's been I'll call it a multicultural day. It's St. Patrick's Day, so we're having Bailey's. But we watched a movie about 2 Jewish men visiting Poland, and it's witnessing their visit to the concentration camps.
Yeah.
So we didn't watch an
Irish movie.
No. But what did you think?
What did I think? I don't understand how he made a movie that was so relatable.
Yeah. For context too, I wanted to watch this one because he was what's his first name? The
Kieran
Culkin? Or is that the Home Alone guy?
It's his brother.
Macaulay is the Home Alone guy, right? You look it up. He was nominated for... Benji's character was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Mm-hmm. And I had heard negative reviews about this film.
Yeah, it's Kieran.
I had heard negative reviews about this film, so I was surprised that he won. And I feel like this was the biggest Oscar movie, like won the biggest award without being nominated for Best Picture. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that there's others. Like Sing Sing was nominated 3 times but didn't win anything. Mm-hmm. This one, without being nominated for Best Picture, this won Best Supporting
Actor. Yeah.
So I don't know.
I was pretty surprised going into it because I didn't hear a lot. I feel like I just don't know a lot of people who saw this one. And then from what I heard from you, most people who did weren't big fans. So I wasn't really sure what to expect.
It follows 2 guys whose grandmother had died semi-recently. She had left them money to go visit their homeland in Poland. And so they are living very different. They're two very different people, but they go on this trip with this tour group, and it brings out kind of the differences, and they get to grieve very differently, I feel like. Benji is fly by the seat of his pants, out there, pot smoking, like wants to get into the real emotions with people and strangers and experience the world.
He's unfiltered.
And David is OCD, anxious, disconnected from a lot, more uptight and worried about things. Is that a pretty good summation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And kind of like what you said, like the fact that this takes place during a trip overseas, it brings out all of those things. Like it brings out, there's some tension because they have not seen each other in a while. Like, why is that? Is there some judgment going on about how the other person's lifestyle is? And so when you're traveling with someone, especially overseas, and like running into these like sensitive topics with like going to a concentration camp and grieving your grandmother, it really, yeah, it was like the perfect just like foundation to set up to highlight their differences and the tension that's there.
Yeah. I feel like we should start with which one do you feel? I was looking at the questions on our paper and I was like, there's really only one. I feel like that it's like juicy, and it's which character you do relate to more.
Yeah. So definitely relate to David. And I know that because I was getting really like warm and flustered and stressed, like secondhand stress when David was apologizing for Benji's actions. Like, I just saw so much of myself in David, like, this is embarrassing. And like knowing like, oh, I know this guy's character. Like, I could have seen that coming, but now I'm apologizing for it to people who don't know him. And I don't want them to make quick judgments, but I also want to be polite. So I got so much secondhand stress from that.
You don't feel like you relate to Benji at all?
No, I'm definitely more like David. Like, I think the differences I notice with these two is David is so much the rule follower, and no matter how well he does things and no matter how successful he is at things, it doesn't mean he's well liked. Like, he can do things really well, and by the end of this film, he is not the one who has made a ton of deep connections with these strangers. Like, he doesn't really make as many memories or new relationships, but he's like doing things, quote unquote, the right way. You know, he comes across as successful and polite and responsible, which is great, but he doesn't seem to have much depth to relationships, even though it seems like he's doing the things you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I was glad that they kept up that theme from the beginning of like, David is not connecting with the group. The tour group is like, he's not one of them, and Benji is going in and making an experience for all these people, even when they don't like him, even when it's like off-putting. Like his interaction with the Rwandan guy at the beginning, or the husband of that like couple like doesn't like him clearly. He like that doesn't faze him, but it phases David, even though it's not him. And then at the end, like there's the conversation on the rooftop. They're talking, and David confesses like how much he envies Benji for being liked and for being a guy that people connect with, and how easy it is for him to like be charming in that regard. So that was cool. But then I also really liked the theme of like them grieving completely separately, and how that like that I don't feel like there's a lot of movies about that. Yeah, and I like it was hard for David to relate to Benji because he's like saw him go through so much and had sort of this distorted version of him. And like I thought that was a very like when I was saying, I was like, what does a real pain mean? The double entendre of like, you're a real pain, but also like a pain that is real and legit, and authentic. That's what I got from, that's what I was like, oh, that clicks in, like how David sees Benji and like, yeah, in this distorted way. And it's hard for him to watch him go through that while also dealing with his own grief. You know, he's grieving his grandmother while he's also kind of grieving that his cousin is not doing well and not who he had hoped he could be.
Yeah, there were so many layers of grief. Like there was like the generational trauma, and not only are they going to Poland, but they're going on a historical tour where they're going to visit concentration camps and get an idea of what this looked like and everything. So like there's that layer of grief, which totally affected the dynamics of the group and the boys. And then, like you said, there's the grief of, oh, his cousin, like, you know, could have killed himself, or he could be homeless and die some other way. Like, there's that grief and anxiety. And then there's the grief of even their relationship of, yeah, we're not kids anymore. We don't live in the same city. Our lives look completely different. Like, you act different. I act different now. There's the grief of that. And then on top of all of it, like the grief of the grandmother, which is why they're here. But something I liked about the film was that it had those layers. Like, it didn't become a film. I feel like if it was just, oh, two boys want to go on a trip to learn more about the Holocaust and to visit the museums. Like, I think that still could have been interesting, but we wouldn't learn as much about their relationship. And on the other side, if it was just they're grieving their grandma, I don't know. I just feel like there's more depth we got because there were so many types of grief happening. So it made it so much more complicated. Yeah.
I did like the movie. What did you think of the end? And like the resolution? There's this conversation on the rooftop with like the red lighting, which I was like, that was a really well conducted scene. And I remind me to go back to that scene on like some of the technical things. But I felt like for the story that it came to this high point where they're both kind of on, or at least that David is honest with Benji and like kind of clears the air, and then he just walks away and they continue on, and it's like this all right, I'm upset and I'm pissed, but I accept you and we're just gonna walk away.
Yeah, I think a part of me wanted more. Like, I think anything we learned about their dynamic was while they were away. It was while they're on a trip. It's while they're away from their regular living situation. So we're not seeing what they're like in their workplace, with their families, in their home. And so we're only getting like little glimpses and like only a little bit of information about, oh man, here's the real stuff they're going through at home. Right. We never get the full picture. And so I was kind of hoping like, okay, the trip's over. And now we're going to kind of see like, hey, David seems put together, but maybe he's got his own stuff going on that's going to come to light. And then maybe we're going to see more about like this dark place that Benji's in. And maybe there's a way that they kind of resolve it back home. And so I kind of was hoping there was more. So it's not just like, well, here's this trip and everything's like going to crap. And now we're back and we're not going to fix anything. However, all that's to say, I feel like that wouldn't have been as realistic. Yeah. I feel like in order to get that resolution back home that I'm looking for, we would have had to have a scene that's like, here's Benji 6 months later. Here's David 1 year later. Like, I feel like if their whole thing is there's so much tension because they're not a big part of each other's lives, like things aren't going to get resolved overnight. It would be weird for them to just start hanging out every day. It wasn't
They took this
realistic.
trip and then it's all done. They're all better. Yeah, no, you're right. That's not realistic.
Yeah. So I kind of wish there was more, but also I think that would have been like, it could have been a mini series at that point if it was like part
That's
one,
what I was going to ask.
Trip,
would you have watched it if it was a series?
Yeah, I would have preferred it as a series. I think that could have been cool to have like the really exciting like touristy moments and then maybe some flashback episodes. And then kind of like when they get home, maybe it has a darker turn and we're seeing what's really happening. Yeah, it's just, we only got a snippet, but it makes sense. Like, it felt like a trip, you know, like when you go on a trip with like a relative or like an old friend, like someone where you're like, we are close, but we're not a part of each other's lives daily. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's a specific feeling to traveling with someone like that. It's like wow, I'm comfortable, but also we have no idea what's really going on in each other's lives.
Yeah, and the travel becomes a backdrop to you getting to catch up and reconnect with that person. Yeah.
So that's why I thought it was really realistic. There's like this comfort level. Like they would have these full-blown emotional arguments and they're still going to have breakfast together. They're still going to share their like toothpaste. You know what I mean? Like that's what you would do if you're traveling with like a brother or a sister or a cousin or like a childhood friend. It's like, yeah, we fought. It doesn't mean I'm going to get like a separate hotel room and like sit apart from you. Like we're family. Like we're going to argue, but we're also going to travel together.
Yeah.
It's a very unique dynamic.
There's no flashbacks.
Nope. That's why I'm saying it's literally like a trip.
Which is I respect that a lot. That like it would have probably been easy when writing that movie to go, well, let's cut back to when when he like confesses that Benji had overdosed.
But then it would have been too easy for us.
Right. And so you only get to experience it through David's perspective. And I think that aids later on in the conversations when like they're arguing and David kind of confesses it. It's like, yeah, you're really only seeing it from his perspective, and your knowledge of Benji is limited.
Which kudos to them, like how much we were able to learn from just being a fly on the wall. Like if we were just random people in that tour group, like we learned the same things about David and Benji those people learned.
Right, yeah. When talking about the ending, like...
Yeah, did you like the ending?
I didn't love it. I thought it was okay. I did like the reconnecting over their grandmother and the house and like that scene with the stones and then the guy like ruins it.
There though.
Yeah, I
wish they would have like broken in or tried to meet the lady who lives there now.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, when I was trying to predict the ending, I thought they are going to interact with the person in the house and it's going to be like it was, you know, like like Benji and the mom or that woman are going to reconnect and David's going to realize like, this is not, like he was jealous of their relationship and
that could have been so good.
I don't know. I thought there was a lot there and that didn't happen. And maybe that's the point. You know, you don't get the resolution you'd hoped for. But I thought that like I get that it was written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. That makes sense because his character from the beginning towards the end like goes through a transformation. You know, you see him at the beginning when he's making those phone calls and on the flight over, like he's sort of uptight. He's trying to connect with David and he's high strung and he's struggling to do so. And then towards the end, and then at the very end, he's the one who suggests like, let's put the stone there.
He's trying.
And he, you know, he's going along with Benji on like breaking up and going onto the rooftop and laughing and stuff. And, you know, I felt like he was a different person at the end. I don't know if Benji was really either.
I feel like with Benji's character, again, it's so hard to read because we just see them on this really fast trip. I think with Benji's character, it's a little bit more confusing to read because there are people like that where it's wow, they're charming and like they're really honest, which is like super badass, and like they're funny, but also like, whoa, that got really dark really fast. And then you start to find out, okay, they're struggling with this. And so it's all kind of masked by this like charismatic and really comical character. So yeah, I wouldn't say he really went through any transformation, but also it's hard to get a real good read of him the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like there's little glimpses of like, okay, this guy's going through something, but he's really quick to jump back and like be a good time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They go to the concentration camp and they witness all these things. And on the drive back, Benji is sobbing. He's experiencing it fully. And then David is uptight. And then they say goodbye to this group, and it's reinforced that David is emotionally like suppressed in some ways, you know? And then I was hoping, I was like, that's going to change. That is like the crux, you know? And Benji's either going to help him do that or like we're going to see Benji sort of learn a little bit more about himself. Yeah, I don't know. I was expecting there to be like a larger shift for both of them. And I felt like David's relationship to Benji matured, but he wasn't all that different. You know, himself personally. But Benji, I felt like he just kind of got called out for his crap and for sort of his inauthenticity. And
sorry, Benji's or David's?
Benji did. Like, I thought the conversation up on that rooftop with the red lighting, when David is like talking to him about like, I would give anything to be who you are, or to light up the room like you do. And every time I see you, all I can see is you on that couch, passed out and overdosed. And like, I'm worried about you, you know? And he doesn't even respond. He just kind of walks away.
I mean, maybe they're trying to say something about addiction and like being in that place, you know? Like,
yeah,
he can channel his emotions with certain things. But with this, it's like, let's not talk about this right now. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It makes me curious. Like,
he avoids a real pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the title of the movie.
Yeah. It makes me curious, like, what inspired Jesse to write that character? You know?
Do you think it was autobiographical? Or do you think it was...
I mean, I don't know if, like, the story is, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, maybe he's, like, experienced that with someone in his life and, like, wow, like, this person keeps, like, messing up and they seem really well loved, but also they seem to be in a really dark place. So, I don't know. I feel like it must have been inspired by someone.
Sure.
Yeah. They're such, like, opposite characters, too. You have, like, would you rather be so emotional and so unfiltered and, like, you connect with people really fast, but you also tick them off really fast? Or would you rather suppress your emotions?
Be pulled back in.
And be, yeah, like, kind of isolated, but seemingly have things under control.
Yeah.
They're both struggle. Did you already answer who you related to more?
No.
The tour guide.
I felt like I related to Benji more.
Tell us more.
I don't know. I just...
You seemed really, like, drawn into him.
I did like him, at least at the beginning. I was like, you know what? Like, he's abrasive and his personality is altogether too much. But I thought, I was like, most of this is about his relationship to David. And he clearly doesn't, like, pander to David's anxiety and like he doesn't make sure that David's like his world is in check. No, he doesn't make him comfortable. And I was like, well, good. This is a trip. Like, this is a vacation. That's what you're supposed to do. And I don't know. I just was like, I think specifically on big things. Like I really liked the scene where he was like he took his shoes off and he went into the water. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
And then the tour group is waiting
Yeah.
for him,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I liked that, and I was like, if I don't do that, I wish that I would. Just I don't know.
You reminded me of him when like certain scenes where David was rushing him and like getting frustrated. And the thing is, they still make it to everything. Like there are moments where Benji takes his sweet time or he doesn't wake up David. Like he doesn't seem super pressed for time, and yet they still get to do all the experiences. And that's where I'm saying like I relate to David, because it's like, wow, like I set my alarm at the right time. I was ready. I was in my hotel at a decent time. And like you were being irresponsible and you still made it to everything. And so, yeah, anytime Benji just kind of went at his own pace, that reminded me of you, because you never seem like you're rushing. Like, and that's not to say like you're lazy, but it's just there's more of this like effortless pace. And so I felt really called out when Benji told David, like, you just seem like something like a little boy trapped in the body of a man who's always like running somewhere. And I was like, that's me. And so I thought of you and Benji, with just like they're doing their thing. They're stopping to step in the water.
So you're saying that your inner child is always feeling rushed. Like, I gotta be somewhere. And my inner child is always like, la-di-da-di-da, la-di-da-di-da.
And this is the thing, is we both get to the same places.
Right. Yeah. I think Benji has a reassurance that he is like, he is where he's supposed to be, or he can, like the place that he is a visceral experience. And like, yeah, I don't know. I like that. And I like that he was sort of wears his heart on his sleeve. I don't know if I there were times where I was like, I felt like both, but I think overall, if I don't relate to Benji more, I would like to be.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about the rooftop scene? You seemed really excited.
Oh yeah. Well, something I noticed, and what it reminded me of was the Social Network. Aaron Sorkin and David Fincher. The scene where Benji and David are talking on the rooftop, it's that Victoria building, it's that red lighting. And have you heard of the 180 degree rule? It's like a thing in setup. So like setting up different shots and angles, right? So two people are talking to each other. You draw a line between their noses. So like draw a line between your nose and my nose. And that creates a 180 degree separation, right? So there's one side versus the other. There's a half circle and a half circle. It gets really confusing for the audience if you cross that line, if you jump between each 180 on dialogue. It helps to always shoot on one side so that you are experiencing like you're experiencing it from one side of the room, if that makes sense. So like if we're going to shoot a dialogue between you and I, we would go over like camera over my right shoulder looking at you for your coverage, camera over your left shoulder looking at me, and then maybe one wide angle that catches both of us on the same side, on my right, your left, on this 180. And you can really play with that when that's like your guiding light. So like in the Social Network, the opening scene where like Jesse Eisenberg, the Mark Zuckerberg, is talking to that girl and like it doesn't go well, you're always on one side and it's only 3 setups. It just gets closer and closer. So it's not like, oh, an aerial and then a wide and then a really close up of somebody's face. And then like, it's literally just over the shoulder, wide angle. So you see them at the table so you can know exactly where everything is. You see both of them in frame. And then it's over the shoulder, but it just gets increasingly closer as the conversation goes on, because they are getting closer and closer to like why they're there, and they end up breaking up in that scene. But literally it's just like over your shoulder you see her, you see the her in
You're
the
talking
foreground.
about Social Network?
Yeah, Social Network. You see her in the foreground, and then it like locks in and it gets closer and closer, and until all of a sudden all you see is her. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So like it's the same setup, it's just inching forward, and that's just like a way to drive tension in the scene. But in that Victoria scene, I caught it where you see them on the like they're talking, they're next to each other. So the 180 at the beginning of the scene was over the side of the building, looking at both of them smoking and looking out over the thing, but you're seeing both of them. You know what I mean? And it was like over the shoulder. And then when Jesse turns, or like when David's character turns, it goes across the 180. It breaks that rule. And it comes, now the camera is set up on the building, like on the rooftop building, seeing David turn. And then it's not. And it like, at first I was like, that breaks the rule. I'm not like that disoriented because it's like a rooftop, but like, I was like, that sort of breaks the rule. Why would he do that? And it sort of shifted this, like, it made it a different scene. It's a different setting. It's a different place. You know, at the beginning of the conversation on that rooftop, they're talking. He's like, "What's your plan?" And like, he's not really opening up. He's not being vulnerable at all. He's just like, well, I'm going to go back and work my job and be with my wife and kid. And like Benji's not really talking. Like he's just like, and then he's like, you used to be different, man. We used to be different. And then David turns, and now we're seeing them from the rooftop, from the thing. Like it's a completely different conversation. The conversation has shifted. It's different now.
It goes from two guys like just smoking and catching up to like there's tension.
Yeah. And even the blocking, like they're facing the same way. They're not looking at each other. They're like smoking and passing it back and forth, but they're just two guys talking. And then it's a confrontation. Then he turns, and it's now it's an addressing. You're addressing the other person. And I also thought the lighting was really cool, where because you're shooting it from the from the rooftop, and Jesse Eisenberg's character is closer to that red thing, you're seeing the red outline him, but because Benji turned towards the rooftop, like away from the street, he's lit up red in this like red. And I was like, he's showing his pain on his sleeve, versus David doesn't have that ability. David doesn't have this like this charm and this expression of emotion. He just can't do that. But he's still at this point turning to him and trying to be vulnerable and like and opening up. I don't know. I was just like, one, it makes sense because Jesse Eisenberg has worked with a lot of good directors on a lot of big movies, but in a lot of like tasteful, tactful directors who are like going to try to technically approach the conflict and the story, and how to advance the plot subconsciously in the viewer's mind throughout the cinematography, through the set design, through the blocking, through all of it. And I was like, that scene, I noticed it the most, where it was like, it just seemed like it was like a lot of setups, but I was like, this is clearly intentional, and it just made the scene feel a lot faster than it was. So I don't know. That was my favorite scene. But my favorite line was pee-pee time.
I don't.
I don't know if you noticed that. When he gets up, when they're in that dinner scene, and he tells him like, first generation immigrant, second generation, third, and then he's like pissed, and he gets up to go to the bathroom, and then Jesse Eisenberg like goes on that monologue and like has that big revelation. When Benji's getting up from the table, he like hits the spoon, it goes flying, and he's like, "I'm gonna go to the bathroom, pee-pee time."
I don't remember that.
It was so.
I thought he just like got up and left.
It was so oddly placed because it's like a very high tension scene, and he just says that, and nobody reacts. Like Jesse doesn't look at him or anything. It just cracked me.
I didn't catch that. No, the scene where they're on the rooftop with the red Victoria sign. I didn't notice anything about the angles. I just thought I didn't know all the technicality. It just looked really stunning. With like the lighting of the sign and everything. And I was like, man, like if I travel, I need to make sure I go to the rooftop. Like this is it. But yeah, I was like, I think I was so focused on like the light and the color. I didn't catch on to like any of the angles.
I might be looking way too far into that.
No, but
that's not
it makes sense. Like it's probably the most confrontational moment. Like there's little tidbits leading up, but this is where like, you know, David's like crying. Like it gets pretty intense.
I felt like that was the climax, and then the visiting the house, like all the rest of the stuff was like falling action. You know, like that was where the differences between the two was most brought out, and then it was, you know.
Yeah, like everything gets hinted at, and that's the big.
I just wish that there was more from Benji's side of that, but movie's not about him.
Which again, I feel like Benji is a very realistic character because he can be so like seemingly honest and unfiltered around strangers. And then when David's trying to talk to him about their real lives and like stuff that's happening right now, like not history, not generational trauma, like he's trying to talk about what's going on right now. That's when Benji doesn't like lean in.
Yeah, even though that's what he's been sort of after
and
the
again,
whole trip.
I think that's super realistic. Like, yeah, you can be goofy and like, oh, people got to take me as I am. Like, I'm going to say what's on my mind. And then the second it's like, oh, actually, this is too personal. Like, this is too real. And I don't want to talk about that right now.
You strive and you yearn for authenticity as long as it's not from you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to talk about something you're kind of like not dealing with right now.
Yeah. There's a guy at my work who sounds just like him. Doesn't act like him.
Sounds like
Benji.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't get him out of my head.
It was
weird. It wasn't like what he said or even his personality. It was just
his voice.
The voice and the pace of what he talked about. And I was like, is this an accent or is this just I think it's just a tone and a pace, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. I won't imitate it. What was your favorite scene, or your favorite line, or your favorite shot?
Honestly, a lot of when they were with the tour groups, there was a lot of like really stunning places they went to. I felt like, and I kind of felt bad for thinking that because I was like, oh man, like this is leading up to like a concentration camp or like they're looking at tombstones, but like the grassy area surrounding the tombstones was so beautiful. And I was like, weird. Like, you know, like they can sense the heaviness, but also this is like gorgeous. Like the nature of this scene is really gorgeous. One of the tour stops when they were about to kind of go through the city, and the tour guide was like, don't focus too much on like the darkness. Like we are going to get to some really dark places, but right now just try to picture what this vibrant city looked like. And with people hustling and bustling. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was like, he was like, this was the Jewish gate. This was like the Jewish city.
Quarter. Yeah.
Or yeah, quarter. And so there would be like stills of different areas. And he would say what it used to be. It's like, there was a tailor here. And it's just like garbage and like a little room above it. A bookseller was here. Like he's showing, I don't know, I thought that was so beautiful, and it just made me like, I want to go somewhere.
It makes you want to travel.
Yeah, it was very simplistic too. Like they were showing like some kind of like rundown areas or like places that were less like kept up for tourists. And yet there was a beauty in like, let's just stop and look. This used to be this. Can you imagine that? So I thought it was really simple, but it was really beautiful. And yeah, I was like, now I want to get on a plane and go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was probably my favorite scene. Favorite line? I liked when David slapped him. And that it didn't end poorly.
Yeah, they don't blow up and then leave. Yeah. I also really liked when he asks for the like some of the trail mix or like the bag of nuts that he has at the very beginning in the airport, and then he's like, here you go, you can have some. Okay,
that was the other thing where I was like, I am the antithesis of Benji, because there were so many moments where David didn't straight up say, hey, like, get out of the way. Cool. I'm going to take a shower now. Yeah. It was more so, man, like like he was voicing what he wanted. I feel like for him, that was pretty direct. He would be like, man, like, I just need a good shower. And Benji's like, for sure. So like, I'm going to take a shower first. Do you mind? And like, David's not going to tell him no. And I was like, never could I imagine being Benji. Like, he does that a lot where David has voiced he's going to do something. And Benji's like, cool, I'm going to do that first. You cool with that? And I'm just like, oh, I don't know if that's supposed to be cool and like, wow, he can just say what he wants, or if that's really rude.
He's so he's so authentic and unfiltered that he then ends up disregarding like other people, and he ends up being
okay. So I'm not crazy.
Cool.
So that is rude. That's super rude.
Yeah. I think they were showing two ends of the spectrum where, you know, it's always a middle ground. Like Benji is like wanting the most out of life to the point where it can be unhealthy to him and unhealthy to the people around him. And he like is not holding himself back, or not like, he really is trying to be himself to the point where it inconveniences and can brush up against other people in a negative way. And he fails to see when it does. Versus David's character is so concerned about brushing up and bumping up against people that he doesn't end up living. And he doesn't end up doing a lot of the things that he can really gain emotional, authentic emotional experiences from. But at the same time, you know, the backstory of Benji, you know, like he's this nervous, anxious kid, but now he has a wife and a kid.
You talking about David?
Yeah. Sorry, David. You know, like they talk about the backstory, but he has a wife and a kid at home, and it's like, I don't feel bad for David in his current state at the beginning of the movie. I guess a little bit, but like I'm not. Versus when Benji's like kind of going through it, I'm like, I feel bad for, you know? So I don't know. It's a very odd dynamic.
Well, I mean, if you think of them as like two little kids too, like which one's going to get the attention?
Right.
The one that's like nervous, but trying their best to like keep everything up, or the one that's like kicking and crying and like doing really unhealthy things.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And so, yeah, David has his life seemingly more together, but also he's kind of easy for everyone to forget. Sad. I feel for David.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jesse Eisenberg always plays, and that's why I'm like, is this him acting or is this just him in real life? But he's always that like awkward but like lovable guy. I don't know.
It makes me want to see The Art of Self-Defense, which he was in too.
Oh,
which is
like
that. I think I've never seen it, but I think has similar themes. But Yeah, he's always that character. Other than Lex Luthor, which is not a great.
He is Lex Luthor?
Yeah, in the Batman versus Superman.
Whose idea was that? That is such strange casting.
He's bald. Yeah, it's not good.
What? Ew. Yeah. I don't know if I want to see that.
Arguably one of the reasons the movie tanks. It does not do well. But anyway. Any last thoughts? Any good... Oh, that's what I wanted to ask. What did you think of the soundtrack?
I was just going to talk about soundtrack.
The piano?
Didn't notice it. Is that the only music that was in the movie?
It felt like it, yeah.
I don't remember any music.
It's just like classical piano. Which is like, I was trying to like really think about why, and there's that part about like Benji plays the piano. They had taken lessons together growing up. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, maybe this is sort of be like, this is the echoes of their childhood kind of thing. But it was, I there were parts of it that I was like, all right, this is getting repetitive, or I don't think this is appropriate. I was like, there's these shots of these historical places relating to the Holocaust, but it was like, bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, dum, dum. It was like this sort of, I was like, this seems
like too light.
It just doesn't seem real.
Yeah. Well, even
it feels like a touristy. It felt like it was trying to be touristy.
Maybe that was the point, which I get.
But then I wanted to see these guys interact, and I wanted to see,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Even with the scenes when they go to the concentration camp, the coloring is still pretty vibrant.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel dark. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, I thought the same thing.
And again, maybe that was intentional. Maybe that was commentary about like, oh, like we're making these places comfortable and we're making it a vacation, whereas some people suffered. So maybe there was like intentionality behind it, but I was like, this feels very bright, just like the scenes when they're just visiting restaurants and like the city. So that was kind of strange. So the more bouncy light music also is kind of, how do we make this nice and comfortable?
Yeah.
How do we advertise this?
Yeah, no, I get that. What artist would you have thought would do well on this?
I feel like when they're smoking or when Benji's showering because he wants music on, maybe some like Flume or some kind of like cool DJ.
Really?
I don't know. Just to match the activities, the smoking pot. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. What music says Poland?
Part of me felt like sort of earthy, crunchy granola vibes, like a Noah Kahan. Or even like, do you know Josh Garrels is? That kind of like acoustic ethereal atmosphere would have been good.
Yeah.
Noah Kahan seems like on a lot of the outdoorsy travel stuff. I was like,
yeah.
Hosier.
Yeah. The more we talk about this, the more I do wish it was a miniseries.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it had really great components, amazing acting. It like the shots were beautiful. The dialogue was realistic, but
so would like each city be its own episode that they visit, or each place, or would it be like?
I think like part 1 would be just
them getting
traveling.
there, the airport, yeah.
Yeah, and like every city could be like bring up a new theme or a new like type of grief they're wrestling with. And then when they go home, it can be more what life actually looks like. Maybe there's a big blow up and then some kind of resolution.
Yeah. Well, that is sort of a high compliment. Now that I'm thinking about it, like
I'd rather see how many movies, 8 episodes of this.
Yeah, I'd rather see more. How many movies do we go into and
more.
we go, that could have been 30 minutes shorter. I didn't need all that. Or how many movies do you walk out of and go, that was good, it just wasn't worth 3 hours. We haven't seen The Brutalist yet, but like, you know what I mean? That's versus this one. I was like, I would have been interested to see what happens when they
Yeah.
get home. And I would have been interested to see more dialogue and more of their interaction
Yeah.
as the trip goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just felt like everything was just like a little teaser of what's really going on with the character, and then we didn't get that much. Yeah, especially with, again, seeing the grandma's house. Like, they mention it so early on, like, oh, the boys are going to leave the tour a day early because they're going to see their grandma's house. And I immediately was like, oh, that's where, like, the emotional fireworks are going to come out.
Sure.
Like, that's going to be the place where, like, I kind of went into it thinking, like, they're going to, like, be so seeped into the tour and just, like, on vacation mode. And then seeing grandma's house is going to bring up all the difficult things. So you agree. You would have watched the miniseries.
Yeah, I agree. I would have watched the miniseries.
Kind of like Fleshman is in trouble, you know? Like, it was complicated. We needed more episodes.
That was good.
Yeah, it was good.
That was a good series.
Mess with my head.
He's a good actor. Jesse Eisenberg.
He is. He's so freaking weird, and somehow he's so good.
Yeah. He's an actor where I don't notice it. I just get drawn. Like, at first I'm like, he's playing the same character. But then I'm like, oh, there's a lot of complexity to this character and the way that he's approaching it. It's good.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts? Do you think it should have won Best Supporting Actor?
Can I check who else was on there?
Oh, yeah, sure. I can pull it up.
Before I revisit the names, I want to say yes. I want to say this one, it makes sense. They would win an award like supporting actor, but not best film. I was listening to someone the other day, and they were saying how usually by the time you learn who wins like best screenplay or best like direction, you have an idea of, okay, that's who's going to win best picture. Like if you have that and like you obviously could afford good actors, like you're probably going to win. But I think this is a good example of like, again, it had really strong components. It wasn't like this crazy life-altering story. It wasn't like that impactful, but the actors were great. So it does make sense to me.
Yeah. His performance was good, but I do think you're going to regret saying that because here are the nominees. Edward Norton, A Complete Unknown. Guy Pearce, The Brutalist. Jeremy Strong, The Apprentice. That's the one about Donald Trump. Kieran Culkin, who won it. Yura Borisov.
I voted for him. I wanted him to win.
From Anora.
I wanted him to win.
So do you think Kieran Culkin should have won over him?
You know what? Yes, actually.
Okay.
My bias, if it was like, what would Uriah pick? I'm still picking Ura. Absolutely.
So you liked Ura better.
But I do think Kieran,
Kieran.
I think he had a more challenging role. Like, I think Ura, seems like he had a countenance that worked really well for that role. Wasn't a ton of dialogue. Like, a lot of, like, my favorite moments of him are, like, very still shots. And, like, that is really great. But I think with Kieran, like, he was able to bounce between, like, almost, like, different personalities.
Yeah.
And he had a range of emotions in such a short film. So I think his character was more challenging.
That's fair. I also agree. I like the character from Anora, Igor from Anora better.
I agree.
But
this
the performance by Kieran Culkin was and that was bounds better than the rest of them. Edward Norton, A Complete Unknown, Pete Seeger's character. He's
great, but he's like the
really
same good. Like
it's not
energy the whole movie.
It's not a super challenging. I'm sure that it's challenging, but like definitely not as challenging as this one. So.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it makes sense. He did great.
All right.
Give him his flowers.
Give him his flowers. It makes me want to rewatch his acceptance speech again too. I'm gonna go do that because he mentioned something. I don't know if you saw it. We turned it on after he had already won it. It was like the very beginning, but he wins it and he goes, "My wife said that once I win an Academy Award, we can start having kids."
I do not remember.
We can start having babies, so get ready or something like that. It was something way out of pocket. And
Little Kieran's
like,
run around.
So maybe he is that character. Maybe he's just a wild.
He seems wild.
Yeah. He's also in what's it called? Succession. It's like a movie about family money. It's really intense. But yeah, okay. Let's read some Letterboxd reviews, but before we do it, I'll just give another reminder that we are finishing up our Best Picture nominee watches. So we still have, I think, 3 more to go, but one of them in theaters and 2 at home, and then we're gonna go move through them all. We were gonna do them each separately, individually, but then after seeing Conclave and after
accidentally deleting 3
seeing
episodes,
Anora, we accidentally deleted the files that kept all the recordings in them, and it was my fault. And so I said, well, let's just do one big best picture nominee episode. So we'll give all of our reviews for each one of them individually. My pick for best picture, which did not win, and Uriah's pick for best picture, which did win. So that'll be our teaser. All right, do you got any good Letterboxd reviews? Or
4 out of 5 stars. Great movie about the pros and cons of having a charismatic cousin. 4 stars. Can't get over how Jesse Eisenberg wrote a scene about how beautiful his feet are. That's crazy.
That's funny. What did you think of that scene? I kind of forgot about that.
It just like he's just goofy, man. He's just goofy.
I remember like thinking about like it's trying, like, was he trying to show that Benji's like small interactions like these have a real effect on a lot of people, including him?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, is this gonna come back at the end of the movie? I was kind of hoping that it would, like, they would mention it at the end or something, but
it kind of it made me think of like, there's some people who compliment people to like fill space, like oh, this looks really nice, and it's kind of like, yeah. And then there's people who give you very like specific, like, oh my gosh, like, I love this about you. It sounds super weird, but it reminds me of this. Like, those things resonate with you longer, and they're a little bit more awkward to share.
Sure. You don't remember people telling you that you're beautiful, but you do remember them commenting on your eyebrow shape or something like that.
Oh my gosh, it reminds me of our grandma. And I know that sounds crazy, but like, you know, like how, you know what I mean? So
yeah, that's fair.
Even if it isn't super flattering to you, it sticks with you, which is, again, Benji's character is so memorable to everyone he meets.
Yeah.
5 out of 5 stars. It's different when you can relate to both of them. Yeah, heard that. 4 stars. I just love when men express themselves.
That's good.
4 out of 5 stars. That thing where you look at someone you've known all your life and wonder when and why they got different.
Man, people got into this movie.
There's a lot of like, I'm seeing mostly 4, 4.5, and 5 stars.
What are the worst ones? Are there any 1-star?
There's a 2-star. Mom, can you pick me up? They're doing Jewish The Skeleton Twins. Unmoved and uncompelled by this.
Oh, wow. Do you remember Skeleton Twins?
I do. I don't agree with that
that's
review.
sad. Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Okay, let me look at the lowest ones.
Skeleton Twins was a great movie, too. I loved that movie.
Half of a star. Ready?
Heck yeah.
This movie has no redeeming qualities. Jesse Eisenberg is less versatile than The Rock. I liked The Social Network, though.
He's like, why can't you be this? That's funny.
Interesting. This one is half a star. Let's cosplay about genocide without ever talking about the genocide that's happening while this movie takes place.
Whoa.
Yeah, I hear that. But again, the movie...
He wrote that years ago.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And the movie isn't about the Holocaust. Like, it plays a big role in how they're processing their grief and, like, their cultural identities. But it's not These men aren't going to Poland because of that. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, they touch on it, but it's not the main focus of the story.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's also not like they never talk about it. I think that would be more concerning.
Yeah.
Okay. Another bad review or a good one?
One of each.
Okay.
And then we'll give our ratings. I'm going to give it a... Did we do out of 5?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it a 3.
I was thinking a 3.
And that feels a little high. It might be 2.5.
Yeah, this one says... Okay, I'm going to read both of these. 2 out of 5 stars. I hate him. I don't know who that's referring to. The review
Which
is just,
one?
I hate him. I don't know.
Faulkner, was that you?
And then one is 2 out of 5 stars. Maybe the timing, maybe the writing. Just not touched by it. Which is where I feel about my review. Like, there's something that's missing, and I don't exactly know what it is. But it wasn't, like, the best ever.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching it, but I didn't feel that moved by it.
Yeah, like I'm not stoked to like share it with other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go 2.5. I'm always too nice on these reviews. I think I need to button down. I need to be mean. I'm gonna give it a 2.5.
3.5 stars. Con el corazón en la mano.
One more time. Con la corazón.
Con el corazón en la mano.
With the heart. Con la mano.
En la mano.
In your hand.
I feel like it has to do
in
with the
hand.
slap.
Like with your heart in your hand. Con la corazón de la mano. De la mano? Is that what it said?
Mm-hmm.
En la mano.
En la mano.
With the heart in the hand. Like, I think, like, either they mean, like, it rips out your heart, or it's, like, wearing your heart on your sleeve. All right, last one.
I don't know if you're going to understand this one. Do you know the Myers-Briggs personality test?
Yeah.
Okay. It makes more sense if you're reading it. So if you're listening, I'm sorry, this is confusing. 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe the NFPest, ISTJEest movie I've ever seen besides Trolls. I'm an ENFP. So I'm assuming that's David. And I'm assuming ISTJ is Benji.
Yeah. So they're just like polar opposites. We are ENFPs.
We are. We're not saying that because we're a gross married couple. It's just we happen to have the same personality, which is kind of gross.
Which is weird. Which is self-centered if we really think about it.
Yeah. All that's to say, this should have been a mini series. Let's
call it what it is.
Yeah. Let's give the awards for acting, but this movie was not phenomenal.
Yeah. Jesse Eisenberg, pretty good, not great. I'm giving it 2.5. What are you giving it?
2.8. 2.7.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot we were doing 0.8, 0.1s. Yeah, I'm going to stick with 2.5.
Cool.
It was okay. It was right down the middle.
Yeah, it was just okay.
Yeah.
I don't regret watching it.
No, but I don't think I'm going to watch it again.
Yeah.
All right, next episode we will see you for our Best Picture reviews.
Oscars wrap.